You weren't born where your ancestors started. Almost nobody on Earth was. And the strange part isn't that they moved. It's how far they moved with absolutely nothing we'd recognize as transportation. No maps, no compasses, no boats that have ever been found. And yet somehow, by the time history starts writing things down, humans are already on every continent except Antarctica. Something doesn't add up. Most people assume the story is simple. Humans walked out of Africa, followed the coastlines, and eventually spread everywhere. Slow, steady, predictable. But that's not quite right. And the real story is far stranger and far more impressive than a slow walk across some land bridges. Here's what actually happened. For most of human history, Africa wasn't a launching pad. It was a trap. In 2025, a team led by Eleanor Scerri at the Max Planck Institute, working with Andrea Manica at Cambridge, published a study that finally explained something that had puzzled scientists for decades. There were earlier attempts to leave Africa, multiple ones. All of them failed. They left no genetic trace in anyone alive today. Something was stopping every migration before it could take hold, and nobody knew what. The answer turned out to be habitat. Before around 50,000 years ago, early humans were specialists. They were good at savanna or good at forest, but not both. The moment they crossed into a new ecosystem, they were operating outside their skill set, and the migration would quietly die out. What changed wasn't courage or curiosity, it was versatility. Humans had to first learn to survive in radically different environments inside Africa before they could survive anywhere else. The wave that finally succeeded, sometime around 50,000 years ago, succeeded because for the first time, humans could adapt fast enough to keep up with themselves. But adapting to new land was only half the problem, because somewhere along the way, humans stopped needing land at all. Here's where it gets strange. For decades, the assumption in archaeology was almost a rule. Only modern humans, only Homo sapiens, were smart enough to build something that could cross open ocean. Every other human species was assumed to be a coastal walker at best. Then in 2003, researchers found something on the Indonesian island of Flores that broke that rule completely. A tiny, separate human species, later named Homo floresiensis. And the only way its ancestors could have reached that island was across deep water that no land bridge ever connected. It got even stranger in 2025. On the neighboring island of Sulawesi, archaeologists found stone tools buried in sandstone, dated to at least 1.04 million years old. Possibly as old as 1.48 million years. That makes them centuries older than the earliest evidence of Homo sapiens existing anywhere on Earth. Something crossed a stretch of deep ocean to reach that island over 1 million years ago. Not modern humans. Something else. An earlier, more primitive relative of ours, with a brain a fraction of the size of yours, somehow got across water that should have stopped it cold. No boat from that era has ever been found. And here's why that's not actually surprising. Wood doesn't survive 1 million years. It rots. It gets eaten. It disappears completely, leaving nothing behind except the impossible fact that something, somehow, made it across. So if the boats are gone, how do we even know this happened at all? Because the only thing more durable than wood is stone. The tools stayed. The crossing didn't leave a vehicle behind. It left evidence of arrival. And that's the unsettling part. We don't have proof of how they did it. We only have proof that they did. Fast forward past Homo erectus, past the early failed migrations out of Africa, past the slow generational creep across continents, and you arrive at the most extreme version of this whole story. Humans didn't just cross short stretches of water by accident. At some point, they started crossing entire oceans on purpose. By roughly 1,000 years ago, Polynesian voyagers had settled islands scattered across an area of ocean larger than the combined landmass of every continent on Earth, with no compass, no sextant, no written charts. They did it using something called the star compass, a mental framework developed and refined over generations, dividing the entire horizon into 32 precise directional points, each one tied to where a specific star rises or sets. On the longest voyages, navigators held the positions of over 150 stars in memory at once. This wasn't folklore. It wasn't luck. Modern reconstructions of these voyages have shown an accuracy rate with less than 1% error over thousands of miles of open water. NASA and the European Space Agency have studied these wayfinding techniques to train astronauts on how to orient themselves with no fixed landmarks at all. The same mental skill once used to find a single island in the middle of the Pacific is now being used to help humans survive in the one place even more disorienting than the open ocean: space. So which is the real explanation for how humans traveled the world? Adaptability that let us survive new environments, vessels nobody has ever found but clearly existed, or a memory system so precise it's now being studied by space agencies? The uncomfortable answer is that it's all three, layered on top of each other across more than 1,000,000 years, and we still don't have the full picture. We have a tool here, a footprint there, a star chart passed down by word of mouth. We've reconstructed maybe 60% of how this actually happened, and we're still arguing about the rest. What we do know is this: every single person watching this is the end result of an unbroken chain of impossible journeys. Across savannas with no clear path forward, across stretches of ocean with no boat that should have worked, across the entire Pacific using nothing but memory and starlight. Nobody had to do any of it. Comfortable, settled groups don't take to the water with nothing but a raft and a guess. And yet they kept going anyway. You didn't inherit a home. You inherited a destination. And somewhere underneath everything you've ever felt that made you want to leave, to explore, to see what's over the horizon, there's a program 1,000,000 years older than you are. And it's still running.